chasing after that next big thing you got to have, that next goal you got to hit. But then you get there and bam, back to square one.
It's that feeling of always wanting more, but never really reaching. Like true satisfaction is always just out of reach.
Exactly. And this chapter of Beyond Birth and Death, it dives right into a pretty radical idea. Breaking free from that cycle, that treadmill, once and for all.
And not just in like a metaphorical way, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about actual liberation from this whole cycle of birth and death.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But what I found really interesting is that it doesn't just throw out these vague promises, like some ethereal afterlife. This chapter lays out actual paths we can take, specific ways to reach this liberation. And a big part of that seems to be devotion to Krishna.
And that's what makes it so intriguing. It's not just some abstract philosophy. It gets into the nitty-gritty, the how-to of this whole liberation thing.
Right. And it doesn't just stop there. It even breaks down the different types of spiritual seekers out there. Like it talks about jnanis and yogis, then throws in devotees of Krishna, almost like it's saying, pick your path.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure, but with, slightly higher stakes.
Way higher stakes. Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me, the text claims that even though Krishna is considered this completely unconquerable being, he can be conquered through devotion.
Yeah, that's a head-scratcher, right? Seems kind of paradoxical.
Totally. How can you conquer something by being devoted to it?
That's the brilliance of it. It forces us to confront this idea of conquest that we're so used to, this whole thing about using force, about imposing our will on something else.
Domination, basically.
Exactly. But this text is saying, hey, real liberation, the true conquest, it actually comes from surrendering, letting go of that ego-driven need to control everything, and instead cultivating pure love and service towards Krishna.
So it's not about overpowering. It's about surrendering to something far greater than ourselves.
Exactly. And in that surrender, that's where true freedom lies.
Okay, so how do we even begin to tap into that kind of devotion? Where do we even start?
That's where the text introduces this fascinating idea of ascending versus descending knowledge.
Ascending versus descend. Okay, break that down for me.
It's like, imagine trying to climb a mountain, right? But you're trying to do it with only your own limited vision. You can only see so far ahead, so far around you.
Okay, so you're kind of stumbling around blindly.
Exactly. Versus accepting a map and a guide from someone who's already been to the summit, someone who can see the whole picture. That's the descending knowledge.
So it's like relying solely on our own intellect on that ascending path can only get us so far.
Exactly. We might feel like we're making progress, but the text argues that we're still trapped within the limits of our own human perspective.
Kind of like thinking we know all the answers just because we've Googled a few things.
Exactly. True. Liberating knowledge about Krishna, it doesn't come from mental gymnastics. It comes from opening ourselves to a higher source of wisdom.
So it's less about figuring it all out ourselves and more about being open to something bigger than us.
Precisely. Think of it like this. Our intellect, it's a tool, a valuable one for sure, but it's not the only tool, and it's definitely not the most powerful when it comes to real spiritual understanding.
So if liberation is the goal, the finish line on this treadmill, what exactly are we trying to break free from? It's got to be more than just escaping the daily grind, right?
Right. And that's where the text really dives into the nature of the material world itself. It describes it with this word, dukkayam, basically, a place that's inherently full of suffering.
Okay, so not just talking about your everyday kind of struggles, but something more fundamental.
Exactly. It's talking about the fundamental miseries of existence. Birth, old age, disease, and, the big one, death.
Okay, and here's where things get really interesting. The text argues that even the things we usually associate with success, with fulfillment, worldly achievements, possessions, all that stuff, it can't protect us from these fundamental miseries.
It's like that saying, money can't buy happiness. This text takes it a step further. It's saying even if we had it all the worldly success, it wouldn't shield us from the inherent suffering that comes with being human.
It's a pretty sobering thought. Makes you wonder, what are we really chasing after? So if this pursuit of external fulfillment is ultimately a dead end, what's the alternative? What does the text offer?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. It proposes this radically different approach to finding lasting happiness, real fulfillment. And it's not about changing what's outside. It's about a transformation within.
So a shift in consciousness, then?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that True happiness, true liberation, it doesn't come from acquiring more, but from becoming more.
From remembering who we truly are, as you said earlier, spiritual beings.
Exactly. It's about connecting with that deeper dimension of ourselves.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But how do we actually do that? How do we connect with that deeper self? Make that shift in consciousness?
Well, that's where things get really practical and where we start to see how these ancient teachings can be applied to our modern lives. But before we dive into the how-to, let's explore this idea of transformation a bit further. Because it's not about becoming someone different, but rather about remembering who we truly are at our core.
Okay, I like that. So less about adding on layers and more about peeling back the ones that are maybe obscuring our true nature.
Exactly. It's about getting back to that essence of who we are, those spiritual beings having a human experience.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? It's not like we can just flip a switch and suddenly, boom, we're these enlightened beings, right?
Right. It's a process. And the text, it emphasizes this idea of aligning our actions with our values.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. It's about making choices day in and day out that reflect this deeper understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings.
Okay, so like our actions should be a reflection of that inner state.
Precisely. It's like that saying, we are what we repeatedly do.
Yeah.
Our actions, they shape who we become.
So if our actions are a reflection of our internal state, then changing our actions can actually help shift our consciousness. Kind of like how even if you're feeling down, if you force yourself to smile, it can actually lift your mood a little bit.
That's a great analogy. The text encourages us to approach even the most mundane activities with this awareness, with this connection to our spiritual core. For instance, imagine rushing through your morning routine. What if, instead, you started the day with a few moments of quiet reflection?
Just taking a moment to breathe and be present.
Exactly. Or maybe incorporating a walking meditation into your commute. Using that time to cultivate awareness of your surroundings, your body, your breath.
Finding those little pockets of time to hit the pause button on the constant mental chatter and just be present.
Exactly. It's about creating that inner space where we can connect with that deeper part of ourselves, that part that already embodies the qualities of a Mahatma. Peace, wisdom, compassion, all of that.
So it sounds like it's a practice, something we cultivate over time through consistent effort. Okay, so this whole idea of liberation, of reaching Kamalika, this eternal realm of bliss, it all sounds great in theory, but is there any way to know for sure that it's real? I mean, it's not like there's scientific evidence for an afterlife, right?
That's a fair point. And it's something the text addresses directly. It acknowledges that the existence of Kanaloka, it can't be empirically proven through scientific means.
So how are we supposed to wrap our heads around that? Are we just supposed to take it on faith?
The text uses a really powerful analogy here. It compares the experience of Kanaloka, of liberation, to a dream. Think about it. You can't prove the reality of your dreams to someone else, right?
Right.
But you know through your own direct experience that they were real. Similarly, the text suggests that the reality of Kanaloka, of liberation, it's accessible through a shift in consciousness.
So kind of like we have to experience it for ourselves to really understand it. But if we're so conditioned by this material world, by our senses, by our logical minds, how do we even begin to access those other realms of reality?
It's about cultivating trust. Trust in the wisdom of the text and in our own innate capacity for spiritual awakening.
So trusting that we have that potential within us.
Exactly. The text emphasizes that we all possess this potential for liberation. It's not some exclusive club, you know. It's about tapping into that potential through practices that quiet the mind, open the heart, and connect us to that deeper dimension of ourselves.
So it's about taking a leap of faith, trusting that there's more to reality than what we can see and touch and measure.
You could say that. It's about acknowledging that our human understanding, it's inherently limited. There are aspects of reality that may always remain a mystery to us.
Mysteries we may never fully grasp with our logical minds.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean we can't experience those mysteries directly, that we can't access that deeper knowing that resides within each of us.
It's a fascinating concept, and one that definitely raises more questions than it answers. But maybe that's the whole point. Maybe it's less about finding all the answers and more about learning to ask the right questions. To approach life with a sense of curiosity, of wonder, of open-minded exploration.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about embracing the mystery, acknowledging that there's always more to learn, more to discover, more to experience. And that's what makes this journey of spiritual exploration so incredibly enriching and fulfilling.
It's a journey that challenges us to expand our minds, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the unknown. But in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, how do we reconcile this pursuit of spiritual liberation with the realities of everyday life? How do we hold those two things together?
That's the delicate balance, isn't it? Acknowledging the suffering and imperfection of the material world, while also recognizing the potential for spiritual growth and liberation within it. It's like walking a tightrope.
Between acceptance and aspiration.
Exactly. Accepting the world as it is with all its flaws while also striving to make it a better place. But how do we do that without getting bogged down by the weight of it all? By all the suffering, all the problems in the world? That's where the concept of detachment comes in. And I don't mean detachment in the sense of apathy or indifference.
Right, not checking out or becoming numb to it all.
Exactly. It's about detachment from the outcome of our actions. It's about doing what we can to make a positive difference in the world, but without becoming overly attached to the results.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between action and non-attachment, between engagement and surrender.
Precisely. It's a delicate dance, but it's a dance worth mastering. Because it's in that space, that delicate balance, that we find true freedom. Freedom from the constant need to control, to manipulate, to force things to go our way.
It's about trusting in something larger than ourselves, in the unfolding of a plan that we may not fully comprehend, right?
Exactly. It's about letting go of the need to know all the answers, to have all the control. It's about surrendering to the mystery and trusting that we're exactly where we're meant to be right here, right now.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most liberating thing we can do is surrender control. Let go of our need to micromanage every aspect of our lives and just trust.
Trust in the wisdom of something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I can see how it would be incredibly freeing.
It is. It's about cultivating that deep inner trust, that unwavering faith that even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty of the world, there's a divine order to it all, a cosmic dance that's always unfolding perfectly, even when we can't see it.
It's about recognizing that we're not separate from that dance, but rather an integral part of it.
Exactly. Swirling and twirling along with every other being in existence, we're all in this together.
It's a beautiful and humbling thought, isn't it? That despite our perceived differences, we're all connected, all part of this grand cosmic tapestry.
It is a beautiful thought, and one that I think holds immense power to heal the divisions that plague our world. Because when we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness, it becomes impossible to hate or harm another without also hating and harming ourselves.
We're all part of the same fabric of existence.
Yeah.
What we do to others, we ultimately do to ourselves.
Exactly. It's a reminder that compassion, empathy, understanding, these aren't just lofty ideals. They're essential ingredients for creating a more just and harmonious world.
It's about shifting our focus from competition to collaboration, from scarcity to abundance, from fear to love. But how do we actually make that shift? How do we cultivate those qualities of compassion and empathy in a world that often feels so divided?
It starts with ourselves, with cultivating those qualities within our own hearts and minds.
So inner transformation is the foundation for outer change.
Exactly. It's about practicing forgiveness, patience, understanding, not just towards others, but also towards ourselves.
Because we can't give what we don't have. Right? We can't offer compassion and understanding to the world if we haven't first cultivated those qualities within ourselves.
You got it. It's an inside-out job. It starts with self-love, with self-acceptance,
Right.
with extending the same kindness and compassion to ourselves that we hope to see reflected in the world around us.
It's a powerful reminder that true change starts from within, that by transforming ourselves, we have the power to transform the world.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not just drops in the ocean, but rather the ocean in a drop, that we have within us the potential to make a ripple effect that can be felt across the entire planet.
It's a beautiful and empowering thought, and one that I think we can all take to heart.
Absolutely. It's a message of hope, of possibility, of the transformative power of love and compassion to heal ourselves and the world around us.
It's a message that definitely resonates with me, and I hope it does with our listeners as well. It's like this whole chapter is urging us to step off the treadmill for a second, to realize that maybe, just maybe, there's a different way to approach this whole life thing.
It's about questioning everything we thought we knew about happiness, about success, about what it means to truly live a fulfilling life.
And sometimes even just asking those questions being willing to see things from a different angle, that can be a huge relief in itself. It's like, whoa, there's a whole world outside of this box I didn't even realize I was stuck in.
Exactly. It's about realizing that we have choices. Even amidst all the craziness and uncertainty, we can either let life just happen to us, or we can learn to navigate it with a little more, skill, a little more grace.
So becoming more conscious, more intentional in how we move through the world.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the heart of this chapter, right?
Right.
If all the stuff, all the achievements and possessions, if those can't bring us lasting happiness, then what can? What's the alternative?
What's the path to genuine lasting fulfillment? What does the text offer as a solution?
It's pretty simple, actually. It's about shifting our focus. Instead of chasing after external stuff, it's about cultivating inner peace.
It's about who we become, not what we accumulate.
Exactly. And the really cool thing is that this whole journey, this pursuit of liberation, it's open to everyone. It's not about joining a specific group or following a bunch of rigid rules. It's about cultivating awareness, compassion, connection, but in our own way, in a way that feels authentic to us.
So taking these timeless principles and finding ways to weave them into our modern lives.
Exactly. And the more we cultivate that inner connection, the more those qualities naturally radiate outwards.
It's like that ripple effect we were talking about earlier, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world.
Exactly. It all starts with that internal shift, that willingness to look a little deeper, to question our assumptions, to embrace a new way of being.
This deep dive has been quite the journey. We've explored the idea of breaking free from this cycle of birth and death, the power of devotion, the nature of the material world, the importance of spiritual growth, self-realization.
And we've barely scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore.
Always. But hopefully this has sparked some new ideas, some fresh perspectives for you, something to reflect on as you continue your own unique journey.
Speaking of continuing the journey, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to ponder. This chapter talks about seeking guidance from a spiritual master, someone who's already walked the path. So who are the guiding lights in your life? Who are the teachers, the mentors, even just those sources of inspiration that help you navigate this human experience?
It's a question worth reflecting on, because sometimes the most rewarding discoveries are the ones we make ourselves.
So keep those minds curious, keep those hearts open, and keep exploring. Till next time, folks.